You're listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast with Matt Tomasi and can be found at borntokickarse.com/episode 63.
Welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast, where you're introduced to the most fascinating people on the planet. Learn the ingredients of greatness that you can apply to your life. And now your host, Matthew Tomasi.
Peter Thompson from the UK completed a gruelling test of physical and mental endurance by running 44 marathons across 44 European countries in 44 back-to-back days. Starting in St Petersberg, Russia, and snaking his way across Europe, Peter's 44th consecutive marathon finished in Dublin, Ireland. In this episode, Peter talks about what it was like and shares some of his experiences along the way. Enjoy the interview. Pete Thompson, welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Now you finished about, when was it, about almost 3 weeks ago now? 2 to 3 weeks ago, you finished a pretty big run.
Yeah. Coming up for 3 weeks now. So
yeah. So for listeners, you completed 44 marathons in 44 consecutive days in 44 of the European countries. So how do you actually feel now? Post-event.
That's right.
How do you feel now? Like, sort of 3 weeks after, this massive achievement, how's your body feeling? How's your metabolism? How are you sort of coping now?
It's a weird feeling because it's kind of during that time when you're doing it, you're so fixated on that finish line and getting there, and nothing else is really going on in your mind. So, coming back to home and come back to my work and everything like that, it's a strange feeling, but it's also really nice, to come back and see my friends and family and everything like that. So that side's been good. But I guess physically, it's I had an issue with my leg for the last sort of 8 days, sort of like a quad muscle in the side that was just really restricting my movement. So literally, I have not run since I crossed that finish line in Dublin. So it's been strange going from one extreme to the other. But I think kind of nutritionally and the way the rest of my body is, it feels okay, to be honest. It's just that kind of that injury in my leg and just adapting to the mental side of getting back to reality.
So when did the soreness kick in after this event? Was it sort of like a couple days afterwards, like 2, 3, 4 days after, you sort of gone cold turkey? Did the soreness really kick in after that period or not?
I wouldn't say it did really. I mean, it did at the start. So 2 or 3 days in, that kind of muscle soreness and kind of DOMS that you get, that was there. But I think my body had adapted by the end. It was just that injury that I was carrying for the last 8 days that it just meant I couldn't really bend my left leg very much. I was probably had about 30% of the movement I normally had. So it was, it was more that trying to go down stairs and those sorts of things. But in terms of that muscle soreness, there wasn't like a sudden hit of muscle soreness. It was probably the fact that they were just really sore anyway. There was not much to go on. But
did you go for like any walks to try and sort of, I don't know, whether you'd have lactic acid sort of build up after 44 marathons? Did you go for any walks or was it just straight out like nothing?
No, I wanted to, continue to run a little bit, but it didn't, it just wasn't possible. So, just been going for walks. I was, just as well, just to be outside, because mentally to go from something and then just to completely stop is just as bad as physical, I think. So, I was trying to go out for walks. I live by the sea, so it's a nice place to stroll around, and then I've just been. It took me about 2 weeks to be able to get on a bike and bend my leg enough to cycle. So, I can now get on a bike. So,
that's good. So, how's the leg now? Was it your left hamstring?
It was my left quad, so the inside of it's a vastus medialis muscle. So it just had a big kind of sort of bruise, sort of bleeding inside that just kind of formed a lump, and it's almost like it was permanently tense, just rock hard.
All right, yeah.
But it's easing. So I can do a lot more now, but I think it's probably still going to be another couple of weeks till I'm lacing up those smelly shoes again.
Yeah. And how were your workmates? Like, what was that like coming back to work after that massive adventure?
Yeah, they were really nice. I work in a small team that works for a service that tries to support isolated people to go out and about. So there's only 5 of us. But no, there were lots of balloons and party poppers on my desk and cake to eat once I got back. So that was really nice.
Yeah, that would have been good. So if we sort of rewind a bit, were you always a runner growing up? Were you pretty active? Like, what sort of sports were you into?
I've always loved sport, but I was never running. I used to hate cross country at school. I was one of those kids that hid in the woods. But I used to love football, really. Football and tennis when I was younger. I used to, up until about 10, I played a lot of tennis, and then I just started playing sort of football or soccer, which is, that's kind of the biggest sport in England. That's what people, sort of kids, tend to do. So I did that, and then just got sort of frustrated, really, that with it a little bit, and just decided to start running, and then I've just kept running, really.
And what age did you first do your first marathon?
I did my first marathon in the London Marathon, which is 2009. So that I would have been 24. So I think I did a half marathon the year before, but that was the first marathon, and I did it in, I think, 3:46, and walked the last mile, and said I'd never do it again, as most people
that's
say.
Why everyone sort of says that, whoever does like a marathon. Pretty much from maybe 32 kilometres onwards, the last sort of 10 kilometres or sort of 6 miles, there's just bodies everywhere. People throwing up, cramping,
definitely
passed out. Yeah, it's pretty good.
That kind of that change in people from mile 5 to mile or kilometre 5 to kilometre 35 is, people change dramatically.
It's just that some people just really go downhill. Now, how did this, or when did the idea of wanting to run 44 back-to-back marathons in every single country in Europe, when did this idea formulate in your mind?
It's about 7 months before I stood on the start line, really. So it hasn't been an idea that's, been around for years and years and years, but I've been searching for an idea for that long, but I never found something that interested me and motivated me and inspired me enough to do it. So when I came up with this idea, I don't know what it was about it, but it just kept drawing me in, and I just wanted to see, first of all, whether, logistically it was possible, and then, there was the physical element, obviously, to see whether my body could do it. So
I actually interviewed a guy, and you actually ran with him. I think it was marathon number 32 in Malta, Nathan Ferrugia. He did. Yes. He did, like, in 2011. There was 27 EU countries at the time, and he did all 27 in 27 days.
Yeah, and amazing.
Where did you I read somewhere online? Did you look up? Was it in the UN, on the UN website that sort of listed out all the official countries, all 44 countries? Is that sort of...
That's kind of how it came about, because there's no official kind of definition really for how many countries are in Europe,
Yep.
which seems strange. I thought there'd be kind of, it would just be a set number. But certain countries come under both Europe and Asia, or Europe and another continent. So there was, the United Nations had a definition of 44. So there are other different definitions, but that's the one that I decided to go with. So
with, like you said, this sort of, you started to formulate this idea 7 months or so prior to towing the start line of the first one. When you made that mental commitment, maybe give us an idea of what did your training look like, in the lead up, in the months leading up to sort of day one. How did you sort of approach your training?
So in my kind of, I guess the last 7 or 8 years, I've built my training up to run, over 100 miles a week sometimes, and training twice a day. So it was trying to take that and then almost train myself to run longer and to run slower than I normally would. So my PB for my marathon is 2:25. So my normal long runs may last 2 hours. So it was trying to make myself run longer and slower, but also, instead of where I might have gone and done, 30 kilometers on a Sunday, I was trying to do sort of 30 kilometers on a Saturday and then 30 kilometers on a Sunday, just to try and do double runs on the sort of double long runs on the weekends. So it was as much about keeping that mileage up to what I had previously done, that kind of 100 miles or 160 kilometer mark. And then, just really introducing those longer runs, and also fueling. So making sure that I was eating the right things and carrying the backpack that I was going to wear. So all those preparations, so that hopefully that when I stood on that start line, I'd have an idea of, knowing when I'm going to need to eat and knowing what bag I can and what I can carry. So it was that mixture of the training, but also the preparation of just carrying a bag. I'd never carried a bag when I run before. I'd only ever run, with a little pair of shorts and a vest on. So
now with the logistics, the logistical planning of, working out which countries you're going to visit first, the order of the countries. How did you approach that? Did you sort of do all of that sort of planning yourself, or did you have friends and family that sort of helped, chipped in with, the logistical side of the planning?
It was very much at the start. It was me, really. It was me kind of searching on websites and just trying to get an idea of where to start, because I had this list of 44 countries, but I had no idea which one I should start in and which one I should finish in, and even if you could get between each country. So I just spent a weekend did nothing else really, but was looking at train timetables and trying to work out more obvious routes between each places, which gave me a starting point. And then I worked out over a period of weeks, a vague idea of a route, and then sort of took that to my friend who has traveled a bit in Europe before, and he's a really good runner. So I hadn't really told anyone about the idea. So it was just we were out for a run, and I said I wanted to do this adventure of the 44 marathons. But I knew the character that he is, that he wouldn't tell me, no, don't do that. He was enthused and he wanted to join in, and he wanted to help. So I used his knowledge to kind of, just look through my ideas and kind of come up with some of his own. So
just use him as like a sounding board.
Yeah, because there was a section where he suggested I stay in Austria for 4 days and catch a train back and forth to various countries because of its location. And that worked amazingly well, because it gave me a base for 4 days where I didn't have to travel and stay in a different place to have somewhere that I could, just not move around for 4 days that would have been good. Was huge. So that idea in itself made a massive difference. And yeah, again, it was just having a sounder board, because even the route that we produced, I still don't know whether that was the best route possible, but it worked. So
yeah, well, there could have been infinite combinations of starting points in all the different countries, and back and forth. Just the different combinations of routes that you could have taken would have been countless.
Yeah, and largely it was kind of, a lot of the time it was basing in the main cities of the countries, because that's where the main transport links are. So that's kind of dictated a lot of the cities. But I guess the rest of it was just down to also thinking about the weather, because I did Scandinavia last. If I'd have done Scandinavia at the start, it potentially would have been a lot colder, and then there's other factors that come in. So yeah, the weather was a big part in when it started as well, really.
Yeah. Now you've got a UK passport, which gives you, pretty much free reign to live and work pretty much anywhere in Europe. Did you have to get any visas over and above what your passport allowed you access to? Did you need visas to any of the countries that you visited or not?
Yeah. I needed a visa for Russia and Belarus. So they were the only two that I needed, because, like you say, having a UK passport was amazing for this, because otherwise it could have been would have been a lot harder. But yeah, getting the Russian passport is quite long-winded and required going up to sort of London and everything. But yeah, they were the only two that I needed to get the visas for.
Do you remember the time when you sort of publicly said to, like, either your friends and family or, on social media, you sort of announced that you wanted to do this adventure, running 44 back-to-back marathons? Do you remember that sort of moment when you sort of publicly announced that? And what was the reaction that you got?
Yeah, I mean, it was I've spoken to, close friends and family before, but I think I put it out on Facebook the end of last year. And I think people want you to succeed in life. So the messages that I got from that, telling people what I was doing were really positive. People they might have been thinking it, but they weren't telling me that I shouldn't do it. They were, they were really encouraging. And like I said, I think people want to see you achieve. They want to be inspired. And I think when they see somebody doing something that they can kind of find that from, they support it. And I had some amazing support, both at the start and ongoing. And that ultimately is what gets you through these things. And I would imagine people who have done similar things would say the same.
Did you have any doubters at all that sort of said to you, "No, there's no way you can do that. 44 marathons is just too extreme"? Was there anyone that sort of doubted you? And if so, did you sort of use that as a bit of fuel to try and prove them wrong? Was there any sort of moments like that?
People didn't say that to my face necessarily. Yeah. But you get comments on social media and things that definitely fuel the fire, because it just adds to the motivation. I think there was an article in my local paper, and someone had written a comment underneath that there was no way that somebody could do this. And I still remember that. I remembered that when I was really struggling. I was thinking, I want to finish this, and go back and type underneath, I did it. Yeah. And it's little things like that you hold on to, and it's a strange motivational tool, but it really works, I think.
Now, you, as part of this expedition that you did, you also did this for your website. It's called marathonsforthemind.com. Tell us about that aspect of it, and the charities that you you helped out along the way. Tell us about the mental health side of things, and how did that sort of fit into this whole expedition?
that was, one of the main focuses of the challenge, was to try and raise money and awareness around mental health. So the two charities that I supported, one is a quite a big UK charity called Mind, related to just supporting people with mental health problems, and another called Livability, which run a project called Holton Lee, which is basically a garden project where people can go and just have a day a week away from reality, really, and kind of be in an outside environment and use kind of that kind of garden area to just to improve their lives and socialize and things. So yeah, that was a massive part of it, because mental health is something that is starting to get a little bit more attention in England, and in terms of people being able to be a little bit more open about talking about their problems. But the disparity between what is spent on physical health and what is spent on mental health is huge, and so much more sort of needs to be done. And I've had friends and family who have suffered with mental health problems, and I wanted to do it for them. And also I've said all along through this, I in no way would ever want to kind of belittle people with mental health problems, but that I hadn't had the best year of my life, and I was trying to to find my own route, really, and this challenge came about as a way of trying to move my life, but also running, something I love, but something that had almost become a bit of an obsession, and something I wasn't enjoying as much, because I was so fixated on times and heart rate monitors and nutrition and all these different things, that I wanted to move away from that and use running to do some good, really, both for for other people and myself ultimately. So
do you sort of work in that field as well? The mental health field? My job is kind of supports people to engage in community activities, and we work with a lot of older people, but we're getting so many more referrals now for people with mental health problems, and it's just because a lot of the services in our local areas are being cut, and the money isn't getting put into there. So I see it every day for the people that I work with, how much of a difference it makes to their it affects their lives. And that was a big factor whilst I was doing it, because I knew my journey would come to an end. I knew when I was struggling, and as hard as it was at times, I could end it if I wanted to. And also I knew it was going to end in 44 days. People who suffer with longer term mental health problems, they don't know when it's going to end, and they have to live with that thought every day. So that was definitely a massive motivation. And we raised over £25,000 through for the two charities so far. And if any listeners want to donate or find out more about the charities, then like you said, their website is Marathons for the Mind, that kind of talks about it all and everything like that. No, it's a great thing that you've done. How much was it? 25 or £1,000 roughly?
It's just gone over £20,000 with sort of gift aid in England. So which has been amazing. It's the support from people and the people that have donated. It's got lots of people to thank. 44 days worth of sending thank you messages.
Now, if we sort of move forward to, I guess, day one of the 44 marathons, where did you, day one, or the first marathon was in, where was the first marathon?
It was in St Petersberg in Russia, the first one.
Now, did you sort of travel there by yourself, or did you have like a crew with you? Or tell us about that side of things. Was there anyone there to crew with you, or what?
There was my friend Bill who helped with the planning and things. He came for the first 2 days, so he came for Russia and Finland, and then in terms of the rest of the journey, it was a mixture of being on my own, or I had some other friends that came out with me at different sections, and also I tried to link in with running clubs or running tour companies in a lot of the cities. So I had people that would meet me and run with me, and that side of it was amazing to meet other people and to get that support. So I didn't have a physio with me. I didn't have a massage therapist. I didn't have somebody cooking all my food or anything like that. It was kind of the support that people would give me when they came out, and I had a physio in England that I kind of spoke to over Skype, which really helped. But there wasn't kind of a team of 30 people following me around, sadly.
Yeah, the funds would have been too full on. You'd need full on backing of like a TV station behind you to do that. But with your approach for each of the marathons every day, did you have a plan to sort of start at the same time every day, or was that just not feasible?
Yeah, I mean, the plan, because of the nature of the traveling, when I started, every day needed to be in time to catch, the transport that I needed to get. So by and large, I was starting about 7-8 o'clock every morning, and then that normally allowed enough time to come back to the hotel for half an hour, get my things together, and then get to a train station or to a bus station or to an airport. So there were times when buses or trains would leave at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, so I would have to get up at 5 to run in order to get to the next to get to that transport, because that was the only form of transport available that day. So there was definitely an element of it being pre-planned in what time I would run, because every day was a deadline to make that
the next
bus.
day.
And yeah.
What about the booking of the accommodation as you progressed? Was that sort of was everything pre-booked in advance, or did you book stuff on the fly?
No, it was all done. It was all done in advance. So I put together almost like a crib sheet for every day. So it was kind of an idiot-proof guide to the day of, I arrive here, I get off here, I'm staying here, I'm running at this place, and then I'm getting on to the next bus or whatever at this place. So it was a kind of an idiot's guide, because I wanted to do as much as I could before I started, because I knew that I was going to be tired. I knew I was going to be stressed. There were days that if I was trying to book hotels and things, or all those little extras, it would have just been too much. So I thought, I've got I massively wanted to do it. I massively wanted to succeed. And I thought, it's as much about getting to that. I think in all of it, it was potentially just as hard to get to the start line as it was to the finish line, in terms of the amount of planning and logistics and things that had gone into, getting to Russia to start it all.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realise that the actual planning side of things is, the stuff that people don't see. All the months of planning, the countless hours of just trying to refine stuff. Yeah, people don't realise that, the amount of work and effort and headaches and, going back to the drawing board over and over, that's an ordeal in itself.
Yeah, it was a huge factor in this, because of, the nature of the travel, that all those kind of plans, it had to work. If I'd have gone out and just booked the first flight and then thought, I'll travel to Finland, it would have fallen apart in a day. And I think, that side of it was massive, and it was something that I kind of worked full time, and I was doing it in my spare time and my and weekends and things like that. But with that, I enjoyed that side of it. I felt like I learned a lot about some of the countries I was going to and things. So yeah.
Now, just with the actual routes that you did, were these sort of like pre-planned routes, or did you just get out there and clock onto a GPS, get a GPS signal, and just run the 42 Ks? Tell us about the actual routes themselves. Did you sort of wing some of them, or were they all sort of pre-planned?
They were, by and large, they were planned. But yeah, there were definitely times when I had to wing it a little bit. So a lot of the time was trying to, if I arrived by train, I'd try and stay by a train station and then run from my accommodation. But I'm not the most technical person in the world in terms of using like GPS watches to navigate. Yeah. I've got no idea how to do that. And if I try and learn it, I'll just get lost. So I was trying to pick idiot-proof routes. So when I was on my own, a lot of the time there'd be like a river in the city. So I'd be running up and down the river or finding a park. Or when I was with other people from other running clubs and things, they would put together a route for me. So that route tended to take in a lot of the views and the sights of the city, which was amazing. And having to not think about where you're running, those days where I had somebody leading the way was amazing, because it's just something to not have to think about, and you can enjoy it. So I managed to include 2 official marathons: the London Marathon, where I flew back from Poland the night before and out to Portugal the morning after, and then Rimini in Italy. Okay. So they were both brilliant to have support on that way round and stuff like that. So, but yeah, sometimes I set off and I didn't know where I was going.
Well, I reckon that would have been pretty good, like if you had no sort of set route and you just go out and you're exploring the city on foot.
And that was the beauty of it, is that there were no rules. I had to run 42 kilometers. It didn't matter if I got lost. I ran up a dead end, I can run back. It all counts as miles. And, although, I knew that there might be a river somewhere, I didn't really know where that river might lead or what I was going to see. So I tried to kind of mix it up and see the sights, because some of these countries I may never go back to. So the chance to see as much as I could was lovely as well.
So prior to doing the 44, had you done much travel in Europe, previously? If so, how many countries had you sort of visited prior to starting this adventure?
I hadn't done loads, really, just kind of normal sort of holidays with family that had been to Portugal and Spain. But yeah, my mum and dad had booked those, not me. So I didn't get involved in that side. But I run Berlin Marathon before, and Barcelona Marathon, and Amsterdam Marathon. So I guess a lot of the travel that I had done was linked to running, marathons, but more the efficient ones. So yeah, I hadn't gone around Europe on a train in my childhood or these sorts of things. So it was that whole new aspect of adding the travel element to it, which is what really excited me, because to run 44 marathons in England every day wouldn't interest me in the slightest, if I'm honest. But the idea of doing it in Europe, adding that time element, the logistical element to it, is what excited me to set off.
Yeah. Now you mentioned you sort of every marathon that you did, you're always conscious of when the plane or the boat or the train would be departing. So you sort of had a fixed time in your mind that you had to be done and dusted with the marathon and then get to the departure point by a certain time. I wanted to talk about sort of your fueling strategy, just sort of day to day, with eating and drinking, like on each marathon. How did you approach that? Did you just run with like a credit card and just pull into service stations or restaurants along the way and just buy stuff along the way? Or did you sort of buy stuff to carry for the duration of the marathon or every marathon? How did you approach the fueling strategy?
I guess I had a plan at the start, and I was quite organised, and that soon falls apart a little bit. Because I carried with me sort of the kind of Cliff gel blocks that I would have on my run, and Cliff bars that I tended to find easier to digest. So that's kind of what I ate on the runs, and I carried that with me. And also when people were sort of coming out, sort of friends and things, they brought extra supplies out with them. So kind of meant I didn't have to carry around, huge amounts of of energy bars and things like that. But I guess in terms of what I ate in the evenings and for breakfast, it changed so much, because I'm normally so strict with what I eat that I have to eat like muesli with honey 2 hours before I run, and and I don't drink an hour before, and all these rituals that I'm sure most runners have of knowing their bodies and when it works best. But there were times when I just ate bread rolls half an hour before I ran. I was eating lots of kind of cake and malt loaf and things, just because I wasn't getting breakfast in the morning, or I was up and out before the breakfast in the places I might have been staying where was being served. So it was a mixture of just trying to get hold of what I could. And again, after the runs, I sort of tried to have a sort of protein recovery shake, but sometimes that didn't happen. And a lot of the time I was having to eat in train station, kind of buy stuff in train stations. And I think I ate a lot of sandwiches and a lot of chocolate, which is probably
calories. Get the calories in.
Yeah, probably I should have eaten more stuff, but it's hard to. I'd arrive somewhere at 9 o'clock at night, and to try and find food that you needed wasn't always easier, because you're in countries as well where the food might necessarily not be what I was used to. So it was more or less just a trial and error, and just eating a load of food. I think I ate like 6,000 calories a day, and I don't think I lost much weight, to be honest, which I think in itself is probably is as much surprising as anything.
Did you ever get sick at all eating sort of dodgy food that you weren't used to?
I didn't, which I think, I'm really lucky about, because those factors of getting ill or, eating something that hasn't been cooked right was a real fear that would set me off course. And I think that's just, I got lucky and didn't get the dodgy chef or something like that.
Tell us about the recovery side of things. So, you've finished a marathon, like you've woken up in a country, you've run a marathon that day, and then, you've finished the marathon. Tell us about the period between when you finished a marathon to when you start a marathon the next day. In between that time period, how did you approach recovery?
Again, it was a kind of trial and error thing, because I was really keen, to rest in between each one. And, naturally, by being on a train for 8 hours or on a bus for 5 hours, that took care of itself in terms of sitting down. But what made it difficult is, like, the first couple of days, my knee was really sore and my ankle had swollen up, and trying to find ice in some of the countries I was in was just really difficult, and having the time to go to the shops to find things. I'd finish a run and want to go and get ice, but I might have an hour to leave before I needed to leave to get a train. So it'd be trying to get back, then go to a shop, get ice to then. So I think I was kind of sellotaping sweet corn and frozen peas to my legs whilst I was on buses occasionally. And I once had like a bar full of frozen peas because I couldn't find any ice. So I don't.
That works. That'd work.
I think I put a picture up and people questioned why I'd taken the peas out the bag, which I think was
just defrost them and then eat them afterwards.
Exactly. So I had to then empty, because I was in a hotel. I had to then empty all the peas in the bin, because I thought I can't leave like 4 packets of frozen peas in a bin.
Yeah, it would have been arrested.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess it was, it was trying to rest, and it was trying to get ice when I could, and just the food. I was really conscious, although it was haphazard what I ate. I was really conscious that I needed to eat, because you start losing weight and you start depleting your energy stores, and it's game over. And similarly with water, I varied between going in countries that was really was snowing to countries that were 28 degrees. So if you start getting dehydrated and things, it's the end of the road. So making sure I was drinking enough water and eating was the biggest thing. And to me, it didn't matter so much what I ate. It was the fact that I was getting those calories in.
Yeah.
That kind of, I guess, formed part of it. And the sleep side, I was trying to sleep on the transport, but it's really hard sometimes when you're cramped in a seat, or to kind of stretch your legs out and elevate them if you need to stop swelling, or just to try and get some rest. So that time when I would get to bed in the evenings, it was just trying to make the most of that and sleep as much as I could, really.
What about like compression gear? Did you sort of wear any calf compression sleeves at all, or any other sort of compression clothing to try and assist with recovery? Do you sort of wear that at all?
I put sort of a bit of compression stuff on my ankle when it had swollen up. So when I was on planes and things, I was trying to wear the compressions just because it's not there's a strange environment in planes. Sometimes it can just make things swell up a bit. So, but that was the only time I'm quite, in terms of the way I've always been about running, I try and simplify it. I think you can overcomplicate running so much in terms of what the way you train and the way you eat and what you wear. And obviously those things are important and they do help, but you go out and you run and you do that consistently, you make improvements. And similarly with things like compression stuff, I've never really used it. And I didn't almost want to start using things that I'd never used before during this, because I feel like through my running, I know my body quite well, and doesn't mean I'm not open to ideas, but I had them as a backup, and I didn't feel that apart from those kind of plane journeys of trying to restrict the blood flow there, it was I didn't really kind of use them too much.
Were there any countries that really stuck out in your mind in terms of being exceptionally beautiful? Like, you sort of you'd never been to a particular country before. You turn up and you're running a marathon through a part of that country that, was there any countries that really stuck out and really struck you as being, oh, this place is incredible in terms of the sights and, the things that you saw and experienced during your day there?
Definitely. There's some amazing places in the world. It's opened my eyes up to, how beautiful some countries are. I think Switzerland is somewhere I'd never been to, and it's unbelievable. It's just you feel like you're kind of watching a movie or something. You kind of feel like you need to tell the world where you are. It's beautiful, the mountains and the kind of the river that I was running along. Yeah, it was days like that I felt like I was the luckiest person in the world to be experiencing places like that. But a lot of the time it was countries that I didn't necessarily expect or have any maybe I did have preconceptions. That was the problem. But places like a lot of countries in Eastern Europe, like Albania and Serbia and Montenegro, were places that I probably never would have gone to, but they are absolutely stunning. We ran with my friend Mano. We ran around a lake in Albania, and it's one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen. And I don't think anyone's probably ever run a marathon around there. And to kind of think that you're doing something that nobody has probably ever done before is an amazing feeling. And to experience those sights is beautiful. So it's definitely given me ideas of where I want to next go on holiday and stuff. So friends getting married in October, and I'm organising a stag do. So it's like I've done the old some recce for a stag do again.
Now you mentioned some of the marathons that you did I guess solo. Other ones sort of organised running clubs and people from social media, would turn up and run the marathon with you. Were there any countries that you sort of turned up where, with the language barrier, they couldn't speak English and you couldn't speak their native language, but you just sort of had the running, running was the common thing between you. Was there ever sort of instances like that?
Yeah, there definitely was. There was when I was in Belarus and Moldova, it was very difficult language wise in terms of getting around. But there was one occasion in Ukraine where I'd organised this guy called Dimmy. He'd organised a route for me, and he was able to cycle with me the first half. But he was trying to find someone to run with me in the second half. And so we cycled together for the first half, and then he told me he'd found someone through Facebook to run, and this guy turned up, and he didn't speak a word of English, and I didn't speak a word of Ukrainian. But we had the most amazing half marathon that I've ever run. Those 20 kilometers, it was brilliant. It was trying to kind of understand each other and use kind of symbols and things to communicate with each other. And he stayed with me to the end. I was really struggling that day. I was done with 10 kilometers to go, and he pulled me around. And I may never see him again, but that relationship that you build up with someone in that short period of time is incredible. And the fact that running overcame that sort of language barrier is something, experiences like that I will never forget.
I believe you got fined. What was the story? You had a €50 note and you got fined somewhere?
Yeah.
Well, what sort of happened there?
I basically needed to get the bus, and I got money out of the cash machine, but all I could get was €50. And it didn't give me it in €10 notes. It gave me a €50 note. So I got the money out, went to get on the bus, and he said it was €6, but he would. I'm in Greece,
yeah.
So I was in Athens. So he wouldn't accept my €50, and I said I had €4 in change, and it was 6, and he said no, you can't pay that. And then he said, well, you're gonna have to, you can't come on the bus, and you have to leave the bus. And I said, well, I was going to miss my flight if I didn't get this bus. So I said, I can't leave the bus. I'm going to miss my flight. And he just kind of waved his arms and carried on driving. So I sat down and got to the airport and went to get off the bus, and the guy came on and was checking everyone's tickets, and I explained that I tried to buy a ticket and that the driver hadn't sold me one. To which he was telling me that he was going to fine me, and so I tried to run off, really, which I shouldn't have done. But and then some police found me, and basically explained that I either paid the €42 fine or I got arrested. So I tried to argue for a bit, but what I found funny was the bus driver said he couldn't accept my €50 note because he said it might be fake. But then they accepted my €50 note to pay the €42 fine. So.
Yeah, that's pretty full on.
Like Greece, but I didn't like the bus driver.
Yeah. Was there any other did you ever have any, scary moments? Was there any sort of instances where maybe you felt threatened, or, any close calls with traffic or anything like that? Was there any sort of...
There was a time in, we were supposed to get this bus. I was with my friends Manuel and Justin. We were supposed to get a bus from Croatia to Bosnia through the night. So it's supposed to leave at 10 o'clock at night and get there at 6 in the morning. And the plan was we'd get off the bus and we'd run in Zagreb. But the bus just decided not to turn up. We'd pre-booked tickets, and they just told us that because it was a bank holiday, they decided not to run. So we were kind of at a small bus station in Bosnia, needing to get to Croatia there was no other forms of transport available. So we tried to find someone that might take us, and managed to find a taxi driver to take us for the journey. So he had to check with his wife first, though, whether it was allowed to drive through the night to Zagreb. But the journey was one of the most scary things I've ever done, just because he was driving at so quickly, and I was trying to sleep more, not because I was so tired. It was just trying not to look out the front window. It's the speed that he was going at, and it's just like you just think you're kind of you just don't have any control. So yeah, so that was a scary moment and a big issue transport wise. But sometimes I didn't necessarily feel scared in any of the countries, but even things like wild dogs, there's a lot of kind of, especially in Eastern Europe, dogs that would come running out of houses, and the thought that if that dog kind of got off that chain or cleared that fence, that was going to be the end of it. So yeah, those kind of were a bit hairy as well. But no, by and large, everyone was so friendly and welcoming.
Would you have an idea how many people you met during these 44 days? People that sort of ran with you either all the way or part of the way, just in all of the countries. Was there any memorable conversations that you had with people? Was there many first-time marathoners that ran with you at all?
There was. I'd probably say 30 days when I had somebody with me. Sometimes that was just one friend. Other times we'd have a running club that had maybe 10 people running with us. So yeah, I'd probably say maybe like 100 people might have been involved, either running or cycling throughout the duration. Maybe even a little bit more. But there was one guy in Slovenia who ran his first marathon with me, which was amazing. He'd done half marathons before, but he'd never run a full marathon. So he made it all the way to the end, and it kind of worked really well because we were both struggling a bit, but able to to use each other to get through that day, which was amazing. And another experience is, like you mentioned, Nathan from Malta before, who'd ran his 27 marathons in 27 EU countries in 27 days, and what a guy. He is inspirational man, not just in what he does physically in terms of the way he talks and what he's done for charities and his own businesses and things. And I have no doubt that if he'd have tried to run 44, he'd have run 44. So it was kind of amazing to do it with him. And he was so kind afterwards. We went out for a meal and he showed me the other side of Malta. And I think in all of this, it's felt like a bit of a community thing. The fact it's the people have got involved, and I'll remember the countries, but I think I remember the people I've met a lot, more than I remember the countries, because if I'd have never met anybody and done this all by myself, it would have still been good, but it wouldn't have been half as fun, or either, whether I don't know whether I would have got through it. I don't think, in all honesty, I wouldn't have got through it if it hadn't have been for people coming out and meeting me at sections when I was really struggling, or just knowing that they were going to be there is a huge mental kind of side to it, to know you've got a friend coming in a couple of days or something like that.
So I guess, what did you learn about people in general? G'day guys, Matt here. This podcast is a labour of love, and all episodes are researched, scheduled, edited, created and promoted in my spare time. Typically, after an episode has been recorded, it can take another 3 hours of post-production activities to get the final cut. If I'm providing you with value and you wish to support my vision of sharing these inspirational stories to the world, you can do so at borntokickarse.com and click on the Patreon banner. Your support will help to maintain the monthly podcast running costs and enable me to outsource repetitive tasks so I can bring you even more kick-ass episodes. Once again, if you want to support me in producing this podcast, head over to borntokickarse.com and click on the Patreon banner. You can't miss it. And now back to the rest of the show. You met all these strangers, across all these 44 different countries, and people you've never seen before, with language barriers, and you don't know their background, but, they're sort of come on board with you for a brief period of time. What did you just sort of learn about people in general during your time out on the road?
I learned that generally people are are amazing. They really are. Like, so supportive and caring and thoughtful, and people went out their way. Like, there was when we arrived on that journey from Bosnia to Croatia, we arrived at 3 a.m, and I phoned up the lady from the running club, and she let us stay on her sofa for 4 hours. People, she didn't need to do that. She doesn't know who we are. She opened up her home, and after the run, she kind of made lunch and let me kind of go to sleep for a couple of hours on the sofa and things. So, people are good. They really are. And I didn't encounter anybody who was trying to, who knew what I was doing and made things hard. They did, they're, more than I would have ever expected anyone to do to kind of help. And I just think human generosity is an incredible thing. And I think what I learned is that if you try and do something for the right reasons, people support you. And I think you can get by with the generosity and support of people. So,
everyone sort of goes through ups and downs, and particularly when you're running a marathon, everyone has their ups and downs, and some people hit the wall. During these 44 days, was there a moment or a day or a marathon that stuck out in your mind as being your lowest point? You either physically, you might have been injured, or just mentally just drained and just, in a real hole. Was there a moment, can you sort of recall where you were when you were at your lowest point at all?
Yeah, I think there would have to be, I was in Moldova, which was day 8. And the plan was I was going to run around a park there, getting up at about 6 a.m. to do it. And I'd arrived the night before. I hadn't got there till I think midnight, and I was staying somewhere that just wasn't very nice, and nobody really spoke any English, and I couldn't get any food for the morning and things. So I got up to do my run, and it was tipping it down with rain, and I set off to try and find this park, and I just couldn't find it. I was just getting lost, and the rain was coming down, and I didn't know where I was. Basically, I just got completely lost in a city where it's not really somewhere that's very easy to run. The streets are the roads are quite broken, and the pavements, and there was water flowing all over the place. And I was really, really struggling. And I came back to the hotel, and I thought, where I'd done 10 miles, and I thought, what happens next? I'm freezing. I don't know. I just didn't know what to do. And I spoke to my physio at the time, and he just said, you find a way to get it done. If you don't get it done today and you try and add miles on in the future, that you need to get it done today. And he suggested, going on to a treadmill somewhere. So I tried to find a treadmill, and I managed. I was going in a couple of random places in Moldova. Managed to find a treadmill and spent 3 hours running 16 miles, staring at myself in a mirror. Not because I was looking at myself, but that's all was in front of me. And I just got it done. And what I was then faced with was, because I'd had to go back to the hotel and find a treadmill, I'd missed the bus that I was going to catch, and it was a bus that was a 10-hour bus to Romania, sorry. So I then had to get a bus at 4:30, which I knew wouldn't arrive into Romania until 2:30. And then I knew that I needed to get up at 5 o'clock to do my marathon in order to catch a 10-hour train to Bulgaria afterwards. So knowing all that, what I had to come and everything, when I came back to that hotel at that 10-mile point, I was ready to be done. But just taking a step back and thinking about, the reasons why I wanted to do it. And, I'm a very competitive person, and, that doesn't leave you. So I think a massive factor that why I got through it, as well as that phone call to my physio, was I had a friend who was coming with his girlfriend out to Romania, and I knew that they would be there at 6 a.m. to run with me. And I hadn't seen anybody. I'd been on my own for 6 days going through Ukraine and Belarus and Lithuania and countries that, I hadn't had many people with me, and to know that a friend, a familiar face was going to be at the end of that journey. I think that's what got me there, really.
Now, with the 44 marathons, was there a particular marathon, obviously the last one, but was there any other marathon prior to the last one? I'm guessing towards sort of the end part of it. Was there any particular marathon that you sort of knew in your heart that, yep, I'm going to get this done? Was there like a couple of marathons out or a number of marathons before you finished that you sort of knew that all the struggle that you'd been through previously, you could see the light at the end of the tunnel and you knew that you were going to get through and make the 44 days?
Definitely. There was a point in Amsterdam which I think was about 6 days to go. And I'd really hurt my leg 2 days before that. And I didn't know whether I was going to be able to run the day after. And I managed to get through that day after, scraping my leg along the ground, really. And I got to Amsterdam and my friend Noel had come out and my brother Andy had come out. And we were running around, and although the leg was really hurting, I felt that I'd kind of found a way to, a technique to kind of shuffle along, really. And I knew that I had my friend Noel. He was with me for the last 7 days, and I was so close that I kind of knew at that point that I was going to make it. And I don't think I knew that from the start. I didn't know from the start. I think it'd be easy to sit here and say that, I always knew I was going to do it, and, I was super confident the whole way. But I wasn't, I really believe in myself, and I wouldn't have started if I didn't believe that I could do it. But I think doubting yourself sometimes is not a bad thing, because, if you can overcome that is huge, because, in all walks of life, and especially things like running, you have moments where you will doubt yourself. And I knew that I would doubt myself during this. But I think that moment of being surrounded by, family and friends and being so close to the end, it felt like that was the kind of the turning point to take me to that finish line.
Now, the final marathon, number 44, where did you finish? Where was the last one?
It was in Dublin, in Ireland. So I had originally wanted to finish in the London Marathon, but it just didn't work out with a date. So I came back to do the London Marathon, and I finished in Dublin. So I was finished with a pint of Guinness.
Yeah, I read somewhere that was that your first ever Guinness? You'd never had one before?
Yeah, I never had one. I was doing an interview with the newspaper, and I think they were trying to find a reason why it was ending in Dublin.
Yeah.
And they were like, "You must have a family connection. You must have a history." I was like, "Not really. I've always wanted to go to Ireland." But so I said I never have a pint of Guinness, and I think they picked up on that. But no, it was nice. I think anything would have tasted nice.
A liquid steak.
Definitely.
Like, if you could sort of sum up all of the 44 marathons and all of the highs and the lows and everything in between and all the travel, was there a lesson that you learnt, or was there a main teaching that you learnt from that experience that sort of, rose above all other experiences? Was there a main, encompassing lesson or teaching that you learn about yourself?
I think I just learned that, that you can achieve some amazing things, if you set your mind to something. And I think there is so much more people are capable of than maybe they give themselves credit for or try to do. And I'd always been somebody who'd thought of these ideas, but these ideas had never got to the stage, they never got to a reality. And I'm so glad that this one did, because this, the adventure's changed my life. It's changed my perspective on what I think I can achieve in my life and what I want to achieve. And I think adventure and challenges are amazing ways to do that, to put yourself in a situation that you don't know what's going to happen. And now I feel I've put myself in that situation and I've got through it. And that gives me huge amounts of confidence that what else, what comes next in my life, I can get through that. And, I don't want this to be the last sort of challenge that I do. But I also, there's other parts of my life I would take that mentality into. And I think that kind of, just that thing to go for it, what's the worst that can happen? If I'd have fallen over on the first mile in Russia, it wouldn't have mattered. I've tried, and that's what I will kind of take forward. And I feel that's what I've learned, really.
Yeah, I guess everything from now on pretty much is you've done the hard stuff already. You've done the 44 back-to-back marathons over 44 days in 44 countries. Like all the little stuff, I guess, from now on, in life, all the little, traffic jams and stuff like that, all those little things are just inconsequential. And, that this massive achievement that you've done sort of resets your frame of reference in terms of how you see life and how you deal with problems and stuff moving forward.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I think, in a way, whilst I was doing the challenge, I only had one goal. I was running and I was traveling. I wasn't thinking about paying my bills. I wasn't thinking about, whether my car or those things that, we fill our heads with in life that ultimately we have very little control over, but they take up so much of our thought process. So it's easy to say that, not to fixate on those things. But I don't want to anymore. Some things really don't matter. And, the opportunities that are out there, they're huge, like the idea of going to do another challenge or the places that I can go and visit and the people that I can meet are endless, really. And that's an amazing thought to hold on to.
Just got a couple of questions on advice. If you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Peter Thompson and give him some advice, what would you tell him?
I would tell him to... that's a good question. He probably wouldn't have answered his phone. I would tell him... I'd tell him to go for it, because it's taken me 12 years to do this. And maybe it was the right time for a lot of reasons, but there were times as well when I wanted to go traveling or do other things that I didn't. And, I don't regret those, because I now feel that I'm in that place. But, I'd tell him to go for it, not over things, because we're all very good at making, justifying things to ourselves. We will find a reason or a quote or a statement that justifies the way that we feel or the action we might take. But, sometimes that isn't right and isn't true. So, I would advise people and advise myself to go for it and answer his phone as well.
And whereabouts can people find you online and, find out more about, what you've achieved and reach out and say hi and, where can people find you?
They can find me through social media. So the Facebook page is Marathons for the Mind as well. And that's, got lots of pictures and videos from the challenge. And people can, by all means, send messages and get in touch, because I'm inspired by other people massively, and I'd love to hear from other people about their stories and things like that. So if people want to get in touch on that. Also on Twitter, it's Peter 26.2, with point spelled POINT. And again, that's got the stuff about the challenge, but also just stuff about me, pictures of my face and things, and kind of future plans and things like that. So and again on Instagram it's Peter 26.2, and the website, which is www.marathonsforthemind.com, which has got a complete breakdown of the route. It's got all the pictures from the route and some of the quotes the stories that I'd written whilst I was doing it. So those are good ways to contact, and it'd be great to hear from people if they wanna speak to me.
Yeah, well, thanks again for coming on, and it's an incredible achievement. It's 44 marathons in a row in all of the countries in Europe. It's pretty good. Yeah, well, thanks again for coming on, and
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, good luck with the future, and if you do anything else crazy down the track, make sure you give me a shout.
Yeah, I will do. And thank you very much for having me on.
Yep, no worries. Okay, cheers.
You've just been listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast at borntokickarse.com. If you liked what you heard and want more, please subscribe on iTunes. Give a 5-star rating and a Kick Arse review. This really helps to boost our presence and continues to allow us to introduce you to the most fascinating people on the planet. Welcome aboard, and catch you next time.